Yeah, OPK looks pretty decent. I'm not gonna do it, but it looks like a pretty decent setup. Bounced off the 20-day, built higher lows, taking out this little range here. It's a decent looking one. Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Yeah, it is. It's a pretty good one. Undercut the 20 EMA and now it's bouncing. This is good sign. This is a bullish sign. This is what I talk about. The stock can be down on the day and still be bullish. I did miss this one, but this was a pretty decent setup. This was a very good setup. This one I remember I traded. Opening range rise. I think they reported earnings or something. It doesn't really matter. It found support on the rising 20-day. First bounce of the rising 20 took out this range at 25 on big volume. That's a good setup. Here's a good setup. Surfing the 10-day, building higher lows, getting tighter and tighter, and then breaks out. This one too. First bounce of the 50-day and has a range break here. Bounces the 50-day, breaks this range on big volume. That's a good setup. You can just see how clean. Like, you know, you need clean setup. Something just keeps surfing. It's not all over the place. Like, it just keeps surfing the 10-day, and then the 20-day catches up. Look at this. It says higher lows, and then you have a range here and breaks that range. Like, this was a good setup. This was an earnings winner. Like, look at it's in a big uptrend. It keeps surfing the 20-day, then it kind of breaks down a little bit and finds support on the 50-day. Bounces off the 50-day twice, builds higher lows, and then it has this tight range. This is a very good setup. This is a very good setup. Okay, big uptrend and bounces, clean bounce of the 50-day. You can see it builds higher lows and then breaks this range. Like, this is a good setup. Really good setup. Just keeps surfing the 10 and 20-day, and then it breaks this range on big volume. Like, this is how it looked like the day before. It's not a super obvious one, but it's there. It's not like a 5-star, but like 3.5, 4-star. This is a 5-star setup. This is a 5-star setup, but it would have stopped you out, because on this day here it took out the lows of this day, right? So you would have gotten stopped out, but the setup here was 5-star. This was also a really good setup. Not a 5-star because the previous day's candle was kind of loose, but it had this big range break and it had been building higher lows. This is also a really good setup. Surfs the 10-day, undercuts it, builds higher lows for 3 days, 2 days, and then breaks out. This was a good setup. You get a bounce of the 50-day. It kind of breaks down, pulls back, finds support on the 50-day, builds higher lows. Guys, you see this? Many times these things build higher lows. Here it built higher lows. Here. Like, before their breakouts, they most of the time build higher lows. It did kind of have a pretty decent setup here. Built higher lows, surfed off the 20-day. But this one didn't have any follow through. Like, just because it's a good setup doesn't mean it's gonna work. Look at this thing. It surfed, bounced off the 20-day, started building higher lows. Got tight. Like, this is a 5-star setup. It's a really good setup. You have this range with higher lows. This is a 6-star setup on a 5-star scale. You gotta fucking memorize this. This is a 6-star setup on a 5-star scale. You don't get this many of these. Look at how tight it is. Bounces perfectly off the 20-day, gets really tight. This is a 5-star setup. Memorize this. This was a good setup. This was another good setup. Surfed the 20-day, built higher lows. Again, the higher lows. This is a good setup though. Right here on this day. That's a good setup. This was a good setup. It did gap up, but then, when you have a powerful chart, a gap up is okay. As long as you get it on the opening range high.